All right, welcome into Surviving Paradise, the podcast that takes a sometimes serious, oftentimes humorous look at the claim by Jehovah's Witness leadership, the governing body, that we are all living in a modern day spiritual paradise hosted by them, 11 guys in upstate New York. I'm your host, Stacy Bauman, former elder, ministerial servant, most importantly, a kid raised as a Jehovah's Witness in the 70s and 80s. As I do, this journey can be rocky. We try to have some fun here. We try to heal. Each episode has sarcasm, humor, sometimes some tears. Please note, we're not meaning to offend anyone, no matter where they are on this journey in or out of Jehovah's Witnesses. As I've said on the show many, many times in the past, I hate math. And I do mean I hate it. I look back at grade school, I felt like I was a little behind my classmates in retrospect, and I remember having to make a concerted effort to buckle down and learn how to multiply and divide in the 5th grade at Sun Valley Elementary School in California. I can still see those stupid sheets of numbers in front of me on my desk, the flashcards, all of it. Ugh. I eventually learned it all, but I have to admit, math has always been a struggle for me. I was your classic kid that looked at algebra and wondered, what is the point of this? I'd look at geometry and I'd think, I'm not the kind of guy who's going to build things with his hands. Why do I need to learn how to do this? These shapes, circumferences, blah, blah, blah. I hated it, all of it. And frankly, I still do. Then, as an adult, I became aware of something I'd never heard before. Who here has heard of discalculia? Have you heard of discalculia? I had no clue. Let me give you an idea of what it is from the Cleveland Clinic's website. Discalculia, quote, is a learning disorder that affects a person's ability to understand number-based information and math. People who have dyscalculia struggle with numbers and math because their brains don't process math-related concepts like the brains of people without this disorder. However, their struggles don't mean they're less intelligent or less capable than people who don't have dyscalculia. The symptoms of this disorder usually appear in childhood, especially when children learn how to do basic math. However, many adults have dyscalculia and don't know it. End quote. What a revelation for me. I often wonder, did I have this? I have to be honest, I don't know. But I'm very transparent when I tell you that no one was more grateful for calculators and even more so for cell phones that had calculator apps than this guy. Very grateful. Not only was my life made easier, but I felt a certain sense of pride in knowing that I was right all along. Most of us don't need this stuff when we get older. I'm not encouraging you young people that might be here to skip math. Let's get the disclaimer in there. But let's face it, as a kid and as someone who might have suffered from this because my brain really struggles with the concepts, I made a lot of excuses. And look, unless you're a doctor, a nurse, a veterinarian, an architect, an engineer, or many other professions I can name, who needs this stuff? I'm going on record right now. Who needs it? Wait a minute. Okay, hold tight. Math is very important. In my case, I get by with addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division. Oh, and I know how to do spreadsheet formulas now, and that sure makes my life easier, not going to lie. But looking back, the ancient Greek Archimedes is called the father of mathematics. It was Archimedes that really kicked off this whole math mess that some of us kids hate and a lot of kids today hate. But he was a brilliant man. Let's be honest. We can attribute modern day engineering, the house we're probably sitting in, the car that we drive, the electricity, I could keep going, and a whole bunch more to Archimedes, the Greek mathematician, the father of math, and the inventor. Needless to say, when I look back at my own experience and Archimedes in ancient Greece, I get the feeling he didn't suffer from discalculia, which I'm pretty sure I did on some level. But whether people like me or my teenagers trying to pass high school algebra at this very moment like it or not, math really is very important to our lives. Take the mundane, for example. How about playing chess? Math. How about playing poker? Math. Video games? Math. Cell phones? Math. Can't fit into those jeans anymore? Math. Let's be honest. Almost everything we measure today that isn't a matter of the heart is measured with math. We need it. We depend on it to drive our cars, to go to space, to be on time for anything. If you ever want to delve deeper into the brilliance of this whole thing called the human mind, math is an excellent place to start. The ancients, even way back then, with no technology, they had calendars. They could measure the sun and the seasons by looking at the stars. All math. So, as much as I personally hate to work on math problems, and I hate it, I am forever indebted to those that embraced the concept of mathematics. I appreciate them and all that it's about. So indebted to all things math are we as living creatures that scientists believe the entire universe runs on, wait for it, math. In his excerpt from his new book, Our Mathematical Universe, MIT professor Max Tegmark explores the possibility that math does not just describe the universe, but it makes the universe. Quote, there are also numbers encoded in nature that require decimals to write out. For example, the proton, about 1836.15267 times heavier than the electron. From just 32 such numbers, we physicists can, in principle, compute every other physical constant ever measured. End quote. And just reading that quote gave me a headache. That's how I feel about math. Nonetheless, it's important. So the next time you're eating a Big Mac, you know that math was involved. It was always involved. Math everywhere. I just want to say I deeply appreciate it, but well, it sucks. I hate it, and I don't have the brain that likes connecting with it. I appreciate that it works, but my brain is built different. So big thanks to the mathematicians, the nurses, the doctors, the engineers, some of which might be listening. Really privileged to know that. But as for me, I'm one of those people that's more motivated and interested in things like motive, matters of the heart. I became interested in those things at a young age. And as I've said here before, I'm an INFJ. I am bent on wanting to know the whys to everything and the why to everyone. But it's the very simple subject or the very subject of math that played a role in my personal journey out the exit door of the Kingdom Hall and away from Jehovah's Witnesses. Does that shock you? I want to say no, it wasn't the old school written review test we did every month in the old theocratic school. It wasn't fudging my field service slip and dealing with the guilt about counting 15 minutes on that coffee break as time I was actually preaching. It wasn't those things. And it certainly wasn't the money I earned, counted, and gave to strangers in New York. Wasn't that? No, it was something much more. I never could have imagined that my overall disdain for doing math would actually be a contributing factor to dumping the only religion, friends, and culture I'd ever known since I was a little guy. But it was. Math strikes again. Allow me to explain. It starts with a quote from one of history's most important mathematicians, the same guy that invented compasses, who helped invent the thermometer and improved on the telescope that allows us all to see the Milky Way and our solar system, and therefore confirmed and endorsed this little thing called Copernican heliocentrism, the astronomical model developed by Nicolaus Copernicus and published in 1543. You know the guy I'm talking about, right? No. This model positioned the sun for the first time in history at the center of the universe, motionless, with Earth and all the other planets orbiting around the sun in circular paths. Pretty big discovery, just a whole bunch of math, and all things we take for granted today in 2025. But back to the guy. It was something Galileo said that left me with many questions, otherwise called doubts, when it comes to all things Jehovah's Witnesses. And I'm here to tell you, it all started with Jehovah himself. What did Galileo say that got my attention? He once said this, quote, "Mathematics is the language with which God has written the universe." End quote. Profound. Considering a few things I mentioned here at the outset, it seems particularly profound that a man alive in the 1600s could see that the universe was best explained with math. And of course, he believed all of this came from an almighty creator, a God of which we were made in his image. Surely, if we lowly, sinful humans can grasp the concept of math, and we were made in his image, the creator of all things everywhere, well, look, he was the master mathematician. You will be happy to know that the governing body of Jehovah's Witnesses agrees. Imagine that. You've reached a logical conclusion that is actually in agreement with the governing body. Here is what the wisest men on earth have to say. From the 1971 Awake, August 8th, page 5, the governing body says, quote, "All of this mathematical precision in the universe, could it possibly have originated without a superior mathematician?" A professor of mathematics from the University of Cambridge, P. Dirac, wrote in Scientific American, quote, "It seems to be one of the fundamental features of nature that fundamental physical laws are described in terms of a mathematical theory of great beauty and power, needing quite a high standard of mathematics for one to understand it. One could perhaps describe the situation by saying that God is a mathematician of a very high order, and he used very advanced mathematics in constructing the universe." End quote. And so there it is. Without turning this conversation into a debate on creation versus evolution, focus, if you will, on the fact that Jehovah's Witnesses believe that Jehovah himself is the master mathematician. He is all things math. So with that fact established, I have a question for you. Why is Jehovah God so bad at math? Why? And yes, you heard me correctly. The master mathematician is bad at math? Jehovah? Why? With numbers? With dates? With patterns? With measurements? With time frames? Yeah. It is a very reasonable and strange question in light of all things Jehovah's Witnesses. Why does Jehovah suck at math? Does anyone know? Have you ever thought about it? I thought I was bad, but hey, I've got company. I got Jehovah. He's pretty bad at math too. The God of the universe really struggles with all things numbers. Where do I even begin on this subject? There is no denying it. There's no way around it. If you're a Jehovah's Witness listening in, you're being deeply impacted at this very moment by Jehovah's very poor math skills right now. Allow me to explain in simple terms. You or even we are not even supposed to be here at the moment. Not according to Jehovah and Jehovah's Witnesses, not according to his organization, but here we are. And while some may say, this is too easy, it's time to move on from this man, there is no way that any of us should. This needs to be discussed. This is about but one example, I should say, we could talk about for hours, but it's a truly profound example of how bad at math Jehovah God and his favorite people on earth seem to be. From the May 1st, 1985 Watchtower, page 4, it says, quote, "Thus judgment would be executed sometime during the lifespan of people seeing the first evidence of the time period foretold by Jesus. The start of this time period would mark the beginning of the end for Satan's world, against which God's newly established kingdom in heaven would execute divine judgment. Bible chronology and the fulfillment of Bible prophecy provide ample proof that this time period began in 1914. Pay close attention. Thus, before the 1914 generation completely dies out, God's judgment must be executed." End quote. One example. And I'm putting my fifth grade math skills to work here immediately. 1914, according to this chunk of wisdom, well, is 111 years ago. And how about this? As of April 8th, 2025, 248 people have been officially validated according to the Gerontology Research Group, the International Database on Longevity, and the Max Planck Institute for Demographic Research, or Guinness Book of World Records. There are 248 people on this planet that saw 1914. And so I'm proposing here, well, if you want to call 248 people an entire generation, as the governing body does, even if none of them seem to be Jehovah's Witnesses either, well, then you go right ahead. But be careful, you'll soon be labeled an apostate, because even the 11 men on the governing body realized at this point that Jehovah makes a lot of mistakes with math. It's a Jehovah math mistake, and it was them that conveyed to the rest of us that now there are things called overlapping generations that, help to explain away the God, the Master Mathematician, who isn't very good at adding numbers. They like to call it new light, when it was really just bad math. But let's leave this one alone. It's just too easy and it's been beat to death. You see, Jehovah has struggled with math all along, according to the Bible and the governing body. Yeah, you can ignore it if it makes you feel better, but the one thing about solid math is that it always does its own thing anyway. It's concrete. You can't get away from it. Sort of like the math involved in the sun rising and setting every single day. It's all math. You can ignore it if you want, but it's always on time. Go ahead and put on those blinders if that makes you feel better. But the sun's still going to come up and it's still going to go down, and it's still just all math. Math, we're told, comes from a mathematician that struggles with a whole bunch of math. But if generations didn't get your attention as a witness, how about a few other examples that help build my self esteem as a really bad math student? Jehovah and his organization made me feel so much better about myself through the years because, well, there are quite a few examples of Jehovah bombing his own math tests. So I want to use this time to give you a few examples of why I'm looking at the Master Mathematician and of course, his organization, because they're the ones who speak for him. And I'm saying, wow, for master mathematicians, you guys really suck at math. Here is one of my favorite examples and one of three I'll discuss today. Here it comes, 607 BCE. Ah, yes, a number that all Jehovah's Witnesses hold near and dear to their heart. They learn it from the time they can learn how to read and listen at a meeting. The entire Jehovah's Witness religious system is based on, well, it's awkward. It's all based on a failed math test. Yeah, it's failed math. I'm not kidding. Sure, you could say it should be filed under deceit, lying, or creative storytelling as well, and I wouldn't argue with you. But when it comes to looking bad at math, this one might just take the cake for most of us. You see, the governing body of Jehovah's Witnesses teaches that Jerusalem fell to the Babylonians in 607 BCE. We have it pounded into our heads by watchtower studies, books, publications, talks. It never ends. But look, scholars, archaeologists, and people smarter than the 11 guys in New York can all prove that Jerusalem, well, it actually fell between 586 and 587 BCE. For proof, look at any and all encyclopedias. You don't need an apostate website. It's all supported by a vast volume of historical information. Why then the bad math, you ask? Well, the governing body claims this figure is wrong. The scholars are wrong. The archaeologists are wrong. All of the information, data, and writings and tablets and cuneiform tablets and all this other stuff, it's all wrong because they said so. Jerusalem was destroyed in 607 BCE. Well, because it makes them the one true religion on earth. That's why. That's the answer. And no, listen, I'm not kidding. You see, it's all about the math. They need the math to work in their favor. Jehovah needs the math to work in his favor, or he has a really big problem on his hands in 2025. You see, if Jerusalem was not actually destroyed in 607 BCE, as they claim, then Jesus' rulership did not commence in 1914. And that means that the Watchtower Society wasn't chosen by Jesus in 1919. It all falls apart based on some pretty easy math. If you're a JW doubting what this evil apostate podcast guy is saying, I would like to point you to the mountain of proof that 607 BCE was completely fabricated by the leadership of Jehovah's Witnesses. Sorry, scratch that. They just speak actually for the Master Mathematician, Jehovah himself. And apparently Jehovah can't add. There are numerous ways used to determine that Jerusalem actually fell in 586, 587 BCE. This includes, things we can touch, see, and look at called Ptolemy's Canon, the Nabonidus Chronicle, the Haran, the Hilastel, and the synchronization with all kinds of Egyptian chronology. The Egyptians were very detailed people. I'm not going to spend the remainder of our time together showing you how Jehovah made honest-hearted people, some of which can't read or even have access to his Bible. See, last week, go on some bizarre treasure hunt to find this information, but the governing body wants you to know that's exactly what Jehovah did. He created the math test to beat all math tests by pointing to some random comments by Daniel in a book he allegedly wrote in chapter 4, which features King Nebuchadnezzar eating grass like a bull, some sort of a fever dream featuring a tree being cut down, and a whole bunch of numbers here and there. All that we are told as witnesses point to, well, yeah, Jehovah's Witnesses. I mean, 607, 586, fevered dreams, a king eating grass. It all has to do with Jehovah's Witnesses. If only Daniel and Nebuchadnezzar knew that all of what they were going through, these dreams and these visions and these Bible books and all of it, would result in drinking Starbucks coffee in front of book carts. But that's what it means, according to the governing body. Yeah, that's what it means. And it's all math. Here it is for that Jehovah's Witness who still, and I'm telling you, 90% of them still can't explain this to someone that asks about it when they approach them at a book cart. What's the 607 thing, 1914? What is this? Here it is. Quote, the cutting down of the tree represents the destruction of the kingdom of Judah by Nebuchadnezzar in 607 BC. The 7 times constitute 2,520 days, 7 years of only 360 days each. The principle of a day for a year converts 2,520 days to 2,520 years. The 2,520 years of the Gentile times ended in 1914, coinciding with the start of Jesus' heavenly rulership. End quote. There it is from their literature. Did you follow? You remember this. Look, I already told you that I was bad at math, but so is Jehovah. Why do I say that? Well, because in their explanation, Jerusalem was not destroyed in 607. It was 586 or 587, meaning 1914 actually means nothing. It's a random year. Well, this is awkward because if 1914 means nothing, 1919, the year we're told Jehovah's Witnesses were plucked from the earth as their favorite people in heaven, well, that really means nothing. Meaning Jesus of the Bible never actually chose Jehovah's Witnesses. Things just got uncomfortable, and it always does when it comes to math. Jehovah must have just messed up the math, right? But it didn't stop the governing body. You see, you can always lift Bible verses out of context, like a day for a year. They mention it there, a day for a year. How does this apply to day? What? To create one of those famous math questions we all failed in grade school. You remember the ones I speak of, right? The train left the station at 3 o'clock, but it didn't reach the next station till 8 o'clock, and somebody was on the train eating 4 biscuits. The biscuits were made from 3 different ingredients, and Susie likes the number 8. What's the answer? Behold, the Jehovah's Witness process of throwing a bunch of numbers at you and telling you it's a fact. And if you'd like to see an example of this in motion, let me show you how they do it. Are you ready? If you think I'm trying to be funny, I am. Let's be honest. But this is a perfect example of how the governing body takes math, mixes it around in a big bowl of soup, and comes out with something and tells you it's very edible. Are you ready? Let me show you. Even without the Holy Spirit inspiring me, because I'm clearly an evil person and an apostate. Here we go. 1 Corinthians 9:27 of the New World Translation says this, quote, but I pummel my body and I lead it as a slave, so that after I have preached to others, I myself should not become disapproved somehow. End quote. Got it. The Apostle Paul, beat your body, keep it in line, pummel yourself. Keep that thought in mind now, as I do what the governing body does with all kinds of Bible verses, including a day for a year and all sort of fun math equations. Here we go. Keep 1 Corinthians 9 in mind as we go to Genesis chapter 2 and verse 24, New World Translation, where it says, quote, "That is why a man will leave his father and his mother, and he will stick to his wife, and, and they will become one flesh." End quote. Okay, I think I see how the governing body is inspired. Using governing body style of reasoning, just like 607, as this first example shows, I am supposed to beat myself up at times, and it looks like also my wife, since we're one flesh, and Jehovah gave us permission at this point, according to 1 Corinthians 9:27, pummel my body, and Genesis 2:24, we're one flesh. Oh, look at that. Jehovah gives us permission to beat our partners. Look at that. See how that works? Do you see how that works? Take a verse here, take a verse there. Oh, this is how they work together, kind of like a day for a year with 607. Pummel your body, your wife and you are one flesh. Oh, I get to beat my wife. Okay, thanks, Jehovah. Am I trying to be funny? I'm simply doing what the governing body does. This is how they reason using an ancient book and their creative math. So 607 BCE is either Jehovah's doing some really bad mathing, or the guys that speak for him are doing some really bad mathing. Oh, or maybe they're even lying. It really depends on who you ask, I guess. I guess you should ask. It doesn't add up. You flunked the math test here. Not to mention, there is no indication that any of this history in the Bible even has a secondary application in our day. Where did that come from? Everything we read in the Bible is actually really about our time? Who came up with that idea? Couldn't have been a man-made group of guys, could it? No. Maybe Jehovah is just bad at math. And I guess by the looks of this, with 607, Jehovah might also be really bad at history. He's flunking 2 of his classes. Uh-oh, he's got a date with mom and dad. So what does all of this cherry picking, fantasy making, and bad math have to do with the life of every single Jehovah's Witness? What does it have to do with them? Is he just trying to fill podcast airtime? Well, allow me to emphasize that without 607 BCE as the date of Jerusalem's destruction, you can't even begin to make up a fantasy about 1914 meaning anything. And without 1914, you don't have the surrounding fantasy details leading to their version of 1919. And well, without that, the governing body and Jehovah's Witnesses are just another religion making crazy claims that they alone were chosen by God to represent him. Biblical fever dreams, prophecy, symbolism, parables, they all mean nothing to Jehovah's Witnesses in 2025 without 607 BCE. They mean nothing. And for a Jehovah's Witness bravely listening, the governing body knows all of this. I suggest you bravely look into the book Crisis of Conscience, a book by former governing body member Ray Franz. He relates in there that they know they flunked math. They flunked it. And by extension, and oddly enough, they also flunked English. And oh, did I mention they also flunked history as well? You may want to look into what experts say defines a cult. But needless to say, Jesus sat on the Mount of Olives and said nothing to his apostles about 607 BCE. What an odd miss. Doesn't it seem odd? even as he was telling them Jerusalem would be destroyed in their lifetime. He didn't even mention 607. Missed opportunity by the Son of God? Maybe. Or is there a possibility that maybe 607 and all the math that ain't mathin' is really just the lies of a bunch of human males in New York? Lots to question here. It's an all-time example of how bad we are led to believe Jehovah himself is at math, history, and everything that surrounds it. But this is about math, so let's move on to another example of Jehovah apparently not understanding the basic concepts of mathematics. And let's just say this is my personal favorite, and I couldn't be more excited to point this one out for those that have never considered it. I know it's been brought up before, but I look for every opportunity to talk about the absurdity. It was this example, this story, that made me realize why Jehovah was so mad at King David for taking that census. Remember that story? I'm sure Jehovah was pissed at David. You see, Jehovah apparently isn't too hot with numbers himself, even with all of mankind and their future on the line. Jehovah wasn't mathing correctly. I take you back to the man that forever has my respect. I know most of you know. It's my guy, Noah. My guy Noah's entire story is a mathematician's dream. First, there's the fact that he's a 500-year-old celibate guy. Either that or he really utilized the pull-out method. Sorry to be crass, he didn't have babies till after 500, who then suddenly starts having babies with his wife at the ripe old age of 500, you crazy kids, who then gathers the animal kingdom, becomes the first engineer on record to build a boat without the use of power tools or even a tape measure. Yeah, and he magically knew how to measure out fallen trees. I mean, come on, Noah deserves our respect. You see, very few Jehovah's Witnesses have taken the time to consider one very important, this really is awkward, one really glaring, important mathematical error, or I guess oversight, regarding Noah and his ark. It's a great story. We like the animals. We point to them a lot. The organization is the ark today, blah, blah, blah. But you missed something. Join me in Jehovah's book at Genesis 6:14 through 16 in the New World Translation, where the master of math, Jehovah God, gives Noah his blueprint for the ark. He says, quote, "Make for yourself an ark from resinous wood. You will make compartments in the ark and cover it with tar inside and outside. This is how you will make it. The ark should be 300 cubits long, 50 cubits wide, and 30 cubits high. You will make a window for light for the ark, 1 cubit from the top. You should put the entrance of the ark in its side and make it with a lower deck, a second deck, and a third deck." End quote. There it is. I am not a math genius, but take this walk with me. For those of us challenged by numbers and units of measurement like me, these numbers are approximately 450 feet in length, 75 feet in width, and 45 feet in height. My particularly favorite math detail regarding the ark was the window. Yeah, ever thought about it? One window. One. It's right there in the Bible. Oh my. It must have been really dark in the ark for well over a year. Just darkness inside. A little beam of light from the window. But forget the light. Can you imagine the smell? Can you imagine the smell that was going on in the ark? And before you throw up in your mouth at the thought of animal shit all mixing together for one unforgivable scent, imagine it mixed with their urine. And what could go wrong with the animal kingdom rocking and rolling at sea for over a year? I'm sure the land animals loved it. And I'm sure they never threw up, right? Have you ever taken your dog on a long road trip in the car? Sometimes it's not very pleasant. But here we are, Noah's Ark, the animal kingdom's poop, pee, and stomach bile all mixed together in a 450-foot long ark with one window for a year. I didn't mention that Jehovah's favorite guy, Noah, and his family had to do some, pooping and peeing of their own. But good thing Jehovah commissioned Noah to include one window. And I'm sorry I got off on a random tangent there. And finally, showing Jehovah is a real math whiz before I leave this, it was the only opening in the ark where they could shovel the crap. Was it the same hole that they had to use this window to get fresh water? Did they go out and hang out the window to bathe and get a shower from the sea breeze? Did they take turns shoveling out of the one window? That must have went well. And you thought Galileo was a genius with math. This is God giving measurements to Noah, who's never built anything, for one window on a floating zoo. What could go wrong? He somehow knew exactly how much food to stack on the ark because, even plants were underwater for over a year. So even the herbivores had no food, had to plan ahead. Noah probably used algebra or calculus to figure out how much each animal ate since he'd never seen some of these animals before. What the heck do they eat? Including the fact that he was packing animals that, also eat each other. But my guy Noah still made the national average by counting his time, there's the math, by preaching each month leading up to the flood. Look, he wasn't the best at return visits, let's be honest. He just didn't have the time, but he knew 60 minutes made an hour, and he was our first regular publisher on record in the Bible. Amazing. Enoch, sorry, buddy. We're going to have to put you second, even though you lived before. Long story. Math, an ark, animals, how many there were. But even after the flood, the Bible tells us Jehovah forgot to do math again. I know, but it's right there. Read Genesis chapter 8 and verse 20 of the New World Translation, where we're told, quote, "Then Noah built an altar to Jehovah and took some of all the clean animals and of all the clean flying creatures and offered burnt offerings on the altar." End quote. Again, folks, I suck at math. But I'm doing some thinking here. Noah is instructed to kill the clean beasts, the ones that Jehovah told him to collect, and burn their dead bodies for Jehovah. Jehovah has this thing about burning animal flesh. He really digs it. He's certainly not a Canaanite god. That could never have happened. But according to Genesis 7:8, this very act that Jehovah tells him to do when he gets off the ark, build an altar and burn the clean animals, folks, if he does this, this would have caused the extinction of all clean animals, since the Bible account tells us he only gathered 2 of each. Only 2, male, female. You see, 2 minus 2 equals 0. I've got a male sheep and a female sheep. Jehovah just told me to burn them. 2 minus 2 equals 0. And I got to tell you should be impressed. I passed subtraction. I got that one down. You got 2 clean animals. You burn both of them on an altar because Jehovah likes it. And you've now got 0 animals. You see how that works? Yeah, right there in the Bible. Jehovah can't add or subtract, and so we don't have sheep today, we don't have goats today, we don't have deer today, we don't have gazelles today. Those were the clean animals. Noah gathered 2 of each. Noah apparently was told by Jehovah to burn them all on an altar because Jehovah forgot that he only told Noah to get 2 of them. Oopsie, Jehovah flunked math again. Whoops. Oh, wait, I'm sorry, this just in. I'm hearing we do have sheep, we do have goats, we do have deer, we do have gazelles today. How can that be? How is that even possible when the Bible says this? I can hear people now. I heard you. I heard you. Somebody say it out loud. I know. Very omnipotent. I know. They were having babies on the ark. Is that what we're supposed to believe? Because this is what a Jehovah's Witness will say. Come on now, man. They were having babies on the ark. Were they now? I'm sure they were. You see, Noah was involved in breeding too. He was letting that go on the ark. I'm sure there was room for more animals. We just aren't told. I'm sure there was room for more food to feed those new baby animals. Oh, wait, you're telling me the grass and plant life was also underwater for over a year? Where did Noah get the extra food he didn't plan for because animals were making babies? Here we go, folks. Here we go. It's math. It's just basic math, a subject I hate. And it's funny and has to be talked about because it's too much fun. Did Jehovah mess up the math? Did the ark have a nursery we're not told about? Did Noah's sons gather up enough plant-based food for the clean animals? I can't help but think that a God who created animals and plants would be prepared with concise mathematical figures for the 500-year-old guy that wasn't a veterinarian and had also never built a boat before. He gave him the dimensions. I'm going to guess maybe it's just left out of the scriptures that he told him exactly what to gather for food for these animals and that they were allowed to get it on so they could make baby animals, and then you need food for the baby animal. Noah. He's a favorite in every week, but he's a favorite when it comes to how Jehovah fails at math, or at the very least fails to tell us much about it. But are you ready for this? None of this is the worst part, folks. None of what I just diatribed and ranted about is even the worst part. You see, when it comes to building the ark and making sure it has one window, Jehovah was very precise about that. Don't you agree? We got dimensions. We got one window. Very precise. How many floors the ark had? Very detailed. Jehovah, I think you'll agree, does not miss any mathematical detail, right? So what is this nutball podcast host trying to insinuate? Well, in just one story, only 6 chapters into the Bible, we learn that Jehovah is either really bad at math or he is, no easy way to say it, he's kind of demented. He's either a bad mathematician or he's a bit on the demented side. There's only one question that remains, and the one I had planned as a Jehovah's Witness on asking Noah myself when I handed him his first pair of khakis in paradise and a fruit bowl and volunteered to be his Bible study teacher. And the question I had planned was this, quote, how did Jehovah know how big to build the ark when he had no clue how many people were going to get on the ark with you, my guy Noah? How did he give you dimensions before he knew how many people would listen to you? He gave Noah precise dimensions for an ark that would include all the animals. A window, don't forget that damn window, and a untold number of humans that weren't interested in living among the demons anymore, their giant sons named Nephilim, and they also weren't interested in drowning. You remember. How did Jehovah, the Master Mathematician, know how big to build the ark before Noah had even told a single person that the flood was coming and that they must repent and get on board with him? He had those dimensions down. But what if everyone listened and everyone got on board? Were they going to run out of room? It comes down to this. How do you build a boat to specifications when you don't know how many passengers you will have on said boat? When the guest list is open-ended, even as you give him dimensions? Folks, Jehovah is either really sadistic or he is really, really bad at math. And he seems really bad at math, just 6 chapters into his history book that he gave to us. But nonetheless, Jehovah's Witnesses assure us that the flood account is an actual historic event featuring real people that you will soon get to hang out with forever in paradise. You're supposed to believe that. But all this salvation and mass destruction talk leads me to undoubtedly my favorite example of Jehovah failing math class. Or I guess you could say the other option is he sincerely hates human beings. I've never been able to find any middle ground with this one. And I guess I'll say I'm going to jump into this one and I'm going to leave my guy Noah behind. There's too much I could talk about, see past episodes. But this example, when it comes to math, is chilling. Okay, I'm not going to get overly serious, but consider this because I doubt many Jehovah's Witnesses have. Again, all this salvation and mass destruction stuff leads us to this math. You see, Jehovah's Witnesses claim that the real reason Armageddon hasn't come yet is because Jehovah doesn't want to kill anyone. That he isn't excited to see Sam Hurd's pitching arm as he throws fireballs at women and children. You can access the Watchtower Library tonight and find endless references about Jehovah's patience and how he wants everyone to repent so he doesn't have to have the governing body help Jesus murder the rest of us, including your next door neighbors at Armageddon. They continue to point to things like this at 2 Peter chapter 3, verses 9 and part of 15 of the New World Translation, where it says this, quote, Jehovah is not slow concerning his promise, as some people consider slowness, but he is patient with you because he does not desire anyone to be destroyed, but desires all to attain to repentance. Consider the patience of our Lord as salvation. End quote. Jehovah's Witnesses believe that Jehovah is the ultimate timekeeper. And guess what time involves? Yeah, math. And well, despite him having his people teach us that this miserable world was going to be gone before the generation of 1914 ended, we covered that. Well, it's still here in 2025. But he isn't slow. He's not slow. No. He just doesn't want all of us to end up like those same people in Noah's day. Even though he promised, of course, to never do that again, well, he kind of backed out. He's going to do that again, just in a different way. That was water. Maybe he'll use fire this time. And the governing body tells Jehovah's Witnesses and those that they preach to that we should all be happy about this. At the Watchtower of 2006, February 1st, page 18, we can find, quote, however, God finds no pleasure in the death of the wicked one. Rather, he delights to see people repent, turn back from their bad ways, and keep living. Consequently, he is exercising patience and is having the good news declared in all the earth so that people may have every opportunity to live. End quote. How about this one? From the Watchtower of September 15th, 2012, page 18, quote, another reason why Jehovah has waited patiently is so that more people can have everlasting life. End quote. When you read that, you can't help but think, wow, we are so lucky, aren't we? Aren't we glad that Jehovah is so patient that this system continues on just because he doesn't want to kill more people? Aren't we lucky? Wait a minute. Or are we? Are we lucky? You see, Jehovah's Witnesses rarely consider the following fact. And this is a fact. Are you ready? By allowing this system of things to continue, Jehovah continues to doom newborn babies to a bloody death. With each passing day that a baby is born and doesn't listen to the governing body of his organization, he's dooming freshly made humans to death. Does Jehovah understand the math? You see, Jehovah's Witnesses believe and teach that only they, other Jehovah's Witnesses, will be saved. Yeah, they're getting soft on that now. They have to. But that's really what they believe. And if that is true, then 2 Peter 3:9, as well as the many Watchtower comments about God's patience, don't make any sense, folks. It's the math. It might just be that Jehovah's really bad at math. You see, on average, the global population increases by 215,000 people every day. But the number of active Jehovah's Witnesses increases by only 320, and that's on a number based from 2017. And it's only publishers. So let me see here. Let's do the math. Because surely Jehovah has done the math, right? With each passing day that Jehovah delays Armageddon, it requires the God of love to destroy an extra 215,000 people. You see, it doesn't take a math whiz to realize that the world's population is growing, which means the more precious souls that don't believe in Jeffrey Jackson and Mark Sanderson and that they represent Jesus of the Bible, well, the more people that will die at those very fellas' hands any day now anyway. With each baby born, you get a law of averages, numbers, math, that doesn't work in the baby's favor at all, especially in places like China, India, or 50 other countries. So if their claim that Jehovah is so loving and patient and the Master Mathematician, he's allowing us to make more babies because those people might be saved, with folks, most of the babies made every day, according to Jehovah's Witnesses, are in line for one end: death. And I'm not a math guy, I'm a nuance guy, and I measure people in love. So this is particularly disturbing. If the new system had arrived in 1975, as they claimed, to make no mistake, the governing body taught that, for those of us that remember, there were around 2 million Jehovah's Witnesses expecting to live in paradise or in heaven, you know that story, and a global population of 4 billion that were in line to be killed, the vast majority. If we were to come into 2018, while there are 8 million people awaiting salvation, all publishers of Jehovah's Witnesses, that means 7 billion people are going to die according to what they teach. So the great mathematician doesn't seem to understand the law of averages. If he is indeed so patient and loving, he is simply allowing time to pass, days to pass, hours to pass, more people to be born, and it's giving him more people to destroy at Armageddon. And of course, the fellows in New York that teach this get to be part of the destruction, with guys that came before them, and of course the invisible angels who don't do much to help them in the preaching work. See last week. I didn't get an A in math, but even I understand this one. You want to call this love? Well, he's allowing time to go on. We've got overlapping generations. We get new light. That's all just because Jehovah wants to save more people. He also apparently wants to kill more people. You see, on the matters of the heart, which is my personality, it doesn't mix well with math. It seems to conflict in most cases. And so I give you 3 examples off the top of my head this week of where Jehovah really sucks at math. He really sucks. And the proof is in the pudding. You know, there's no denying math because It's not a matter of the heart. It's more a function of concrete things. But how about some fun with numbers? If you don't believe that Jehovah seems to struggle with numbers, or he gets set in patterns, or whatever you want to say, I'm not a mathematician. Um, how about some fun with numbers? And I'm going to take them from Jehovah's main source of communication, that book we call the Bible. We're back to random thoughts that come and go on the show. That's what random means. That were thoughts I had that seemed to be only of interest to me. And these all center around what I consider bad math, numbers, and more numbers. Are you ready for some examples? Here we go. How about this random fact? Is the fact that Jehovah is bad at math lend itself to everything, I don't know, from the tribes of Israel to the apostles to the book of Revelation to the number 12? Is it easier for him to remember? Sort of like how we lowly humans do what we do with our passwords online. If you're someone who's done this, you can't do it for very long. We pick our favorite number or our birthday or whatever it takes to remember numbers. Password for our phone, passwords on paying bills. If you look at the Bible, the number 12 is everywhere. Do research in their library. Accident? Just helps Jehovah remember things better? 12 tribes of Israel, 12 apostles, 12 foundation stones in Israel, 12 stones for Elijah's altar, 12, 12, 12. Interesting. How about this one? Og, the king of the giants, the Bible tells us, was a tall man, even if he played in the NBA. His bed, according to the Bible, measured 9 by 4 cubits, which in feet is 15 feet long and 6 feet wide. That's a big giant guy. Deuteronomy 3:11. No, it's not the Game of Thrones. How about this one? David kills 200 Philistines and brings their foreskins to Paul as a bride price to buy his first wife, Saul's daughter, Michal. Saul had only asked for 100 foreskins, but apparently David was feeling generous. Fun with numbers, 1 Samuel 18:25 through 27. Does anyone else really want to see 100 or even 200 male foreskins? What a delightful bag of fun that must have been. Saul's an odd guy. How about this? The book of Numbers really exposes, in my opinion, Jehovah's problem with math, and I couldn't help to think how appropriate. The book of Numbers. Yeah. Here's a few examples of the math-challenged God in action. Are you ready? The Israelite population went from 70 to several million, over 600,000 males alone in just a few generations. This is according to chapter 1, verses 45 through 46 of Numbers. I can't even imagine what the women went through. How did you go from 70 people to several million? That's a whole lot of ladies getting a lot of male attention. I'll put it delicately. Wow. Did someone mess up the math there, or is that accurate? How about this? And there we saw giants, and we were in our own sight as a grasshopper, and so we were in their sight. This is from Numbers 13:33. According to this description, then, the giants must have been about 300 feet tall. Didn't see that mentioned anywhere. These are the same giants, by the way. You remember the Nephilim that resulted when the sons of God mated with daughters of men in Genesis 6:4. Wait a minute. Of course, these superhuman God-men would have died at the flood, right? So what the hell are they doing being spotted in Numbers chapter 13? Aren't they all drowned and gone? Not so, I guess, unless someone flunked math and mixed up here. How about this? God delivers the Syrians into the Israelites' hands, and 100,000 were killed in one day. Of those that escaped, 27,000 were crushed by a falling wall, according to Kings 20:28 through 30. Wait a minute. Wait a minute. 27,000 men were crushed by a falling wall? That is one hell of a big, big wall. 27,000 people crushed by a wall. That's half a coliseum in NFL football standards. Wow. Math ain't mathin'. How about this? Hezekiah, the son of Ahaz, began to reign when he was 25 years old. His father was 36 years old when Hezekiah took over in chapter 16 and verse 2 of 2 Kings. Wait a minute. So Ahaz was only 11 years old when he fathered Hezekiah? That was one fertile 11-year-old boy. And wow, who was the lucky lady who got to get naked with the 11-year-old Ahaz to produce Hezekiah? Can we get this story in the Young People Ask book, please? Not in the Bible stories. Why not? Math ain't mathin'. How about this? Jehoram was 32 years old when he began to reign, and he reigned for 8 years and then died, a 40-year-old. After his death, his youngest son, Ahaziah, began to reign at the age of 42. So, wait a minute. So the son, Ahaziah, was 2 years older than his own father? Yes, you can read this with your own eyes at 2 Chronicles chapter 21 and chapter 22. Math ain't mathin'. Finally this, and then I'll shut up. Hebrews 9:4. Here we're told that the Ark of the Covenant had a lot more in it that was reported. And at 2 Chronicles chapter 5 and verse 10, both of which say that the Ark had only Moses' tablets in it. From the dimensions of the Ark, which you can find at Exodus 25:10, Aaron's staff could hardly fit in it anyway, because the Ark was built to 2.5 by 1.5 by 1.5 cubits, which amounts to 45 by 27 by 27 inches. Aaron's staff was in there? How does that show? Maybe Aaron was 4'2", or maybe they broke his rod into pieces, or they just crammed it all in. Nobody knows. But the math ain't mathin', and I'm going to shut up now. It's been long fascinating to me how bad Jehovah is at math. And I say math, and we tend to think addition, subtraction, multiplication, division, but math encompasses algebra, geometry. It gives us what we have today. I could go on for another hour, if you'd like, with Jehovah's math skills surrounding the year 1935. Or how about the very literal number of 144,000? Or one of my personal favorites, how the universe and beyond, the 6 creative days, all come into play. I could keep going, folks, but let's face it. I hate math. I've had enough at this point. I hated it as a kid, and I hate it even more now. Even when I see the math homework that comes into my house, I just cringe. But even with my disdain for all things numbers, I learned to deeply appreciate them as a human being, and we all should. I love birthdays now. I love watching my kids pass milestones. I love passing each 24-hour period with the people I love most in the world. I love adding up the memories. I've lost count of the wrinkles, but I earned every damn one of them. Yeah, let's face it, it's all math. It's all math. But what does any of this nonsense have to do with Jehovah's Witnesses? Well, I came to a conclusion when I left the organization. With mankind in the balance and my own life to live, well, Jehovah's Witnesses, I came to the conclusion that they really, really suck at math. I want to thank you for joining me this week. By the way, if you were an A student in math, I know 11 guys in upstate New York that could really use your help. In the meantime, wherever you may be well.